Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting on October 29th. Welcome. I'm calling the meeting to order and I'm going to take attendance. Vice Chair Shen.
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi.
I am attending virtually under, and I'm not sure which provision that is, virtually, and there's no one in the room with me as well.
Wonderful. Yes, you're connected remotely. Just cause a policy AB 2449. Thank you for attending. Commissioner Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Stern. Commissioner De La Garza.
Present.
And Chair Gordon present. And we also welcome our council liaison, Pat Burt. Thank you for attending. Are there any agenda changes, additions, or deletions?
No.
Thank
There are
you.
none.
Thank you. And do we have anyone for public comment?
No members of the public in attendance.
Thank you, Nadia. Let's go ahead and approve. We have actually two meeting minutes to approve. And I guess I will do that separately. First, for our regular meeting on July 18th, 2024.
I move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call of approval, Vice Chair Chen.
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Yes.
And Commissioner De La Garza.
Yes.
And Chair Gordon, yes. Moving on to our minutes from a special meeting on August 28th. Any comments?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. And roll call, which is Vice Chair Shen.
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Stern. Commissioner De La Garza.
Yes.
And Chair Gordon, yes. Thank you, everyone. Official city comments.
We have a few for you this evening. Let's see. Little microphone check. So we'll have some images for you in a second, but we did want to update the commissioners that the code art call for applications closed October 18th. We had a really great turnout with over 100 applicants. Our selection panel is meeting this Friday. So they're doing their online scoring right now and we'll meet on Friday. So more to come at our next meeting. And here is an image from one of our King Artist in Residence, Alma Landetta's workshops. The portrait workshops have been extremely well attended. They had one most recently, October 16th at Mitchell Park. There is another one coming up November 14th, if any of you are interested in attending and experiencing it for yourself. And that will also be at Mitchell Park, and I'll have to get back to you with a time. Usually it's in the mid-afternoon. And then Nadia always keeps me guessing with the images. This is one of the pieces that was installed by Peter Wegner at the Public Safety Building with the protections you all approved the funding for in place. So you're only seeing a little window into the artwork. So that's 2 out of 3 that are installed. We are waiting for the third one. Here you can see the brackets behind the wall. That's where the 100,000 decisions will be installed. But right now the protection is in place to keep the wall and that support structure from getting any damage. So that will be the last one to be installed. And also, we wanted to make sure you see the cards before you. The Carberly Artist Open Studios, which is going to be amazing. You have the card there. So that is October 9th. I'm sorry, November, what am I saying? November 9th. And it should be a lot of fun. There's going to be food trucks and there's lots of partner organizations that have jumped on board. So there's going to be lots of programming for everyone, not just the artist studios, but lots of great programming. So I hope you all will turn out. And that's it for staff comments.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Just a follow up on the Coverly, you may have seen that we struck an agreement with the school district to have an option to buy the additional 7 acres, which would basically have the city owning all the 15 acres or so where there are buildings. And the plan is to have a bond measure go to the voters in 2026, which is actually going to be a fast pace to come up with what would be the rough scope of work and the cost to do it. It's going to be a lot of money for both the acquisition of those additional 7 acres, which is in the vicinity of 60 million. I can't remember. And then whatever portion of redevelopment of Coverly that we would take on and whatever the voters end up having an appetite for. But we had a Coverly ad hoc committee of the council that went through all that negotiation. There's now an interest in reformulating a version of that ad hoc to look at not only the planning for that upcoming ballot measure and what would be proposed, but interim measures between now and when construction would actually start, not only that ballot measure. So those are kind of in 2 categories. One is the possibility of this gym that has been in the works for quite some time. The nonprofit that's trying to raise over $30 million for that to basically donate to the city had looked at Greer because they thought that was the only location. It now seems people are very hopeful they'll be actually able to be at Coverly. And the second part, which affects you more, is an interest in really activating Coverly in the interim. So we build off of 2 successes, the gym and really sprucing up Coverly in advance of 2026, either way to do it, but having that additional benefit. And there's an assumption that there will be some significant art activity through there and perhaps with some relationship to the artists in residence. We have no idea, but I just wanted to present that that's on the horizon and we're likely to start talking about that in short order. So thanks.
Exciting.
Could I ask a question? Who's talking about that? How do you get on the committee for that?
Well, it's a council, so first it'll be presumably a council ad hoc committee, but then I would also anticipate that there will probably be a kind of a community advisory group from different stakeholders. And it could very well be that we would say, well, we want a person from the Public Art Commission, we want someone from the Parks and Rec, and then the Friends of Coverly and maybe Green Meadow Neighborhood. I don't know what it would be, but that kind of defining what would be appropriate stakeholders to bring into that. But we haven't worked that out. This is just my anticipation of what I'm guessing will occur in some form, or roughly like that.
So I just want to point out, we do have as item 2 our Public Art Commission work plan, in which
Yep.
I anticipated we would have this
Well,
discussion.
and one of the reasons I put it in now is because I have to go shortly, and I didn't want, and I was going, oh, I don't want to miss out on letting you know that, and I
Okay.
thought it would be a good dovetail off of your comments. All right, thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. That is really exciting. Moving on to non-action items. The first is the Public Art Fund. As you know, we talked about this in our last meeting, and we have some funds, and we are looking for an ad hoc committee to discuss how we may use these funds in the future. So this is something we can open discussion about, and also just talk about who's going to be on that ad hoc committee, and that would be 3 commissioners, correct?
It would be, and if I could just give a little bit
Sure.
more background. So
Absolutely.
the Public Art Fund was established when the Percent for Art and Private Development ordinance went into effect, which was in 2014. So that fund has been growing over years. Part of it does offset staff expenses. We tend to bring in a little over, we average about $320,000 a year that comes in. We have about 2.3 million in it as of right now. We did have a previous ad hoc committee, which Commissioner Miyagi was a part of at one time to evaluate at that time with that fund balance, what kind of opportunities there might be that fit in with our public art master plan. So at that time, we looked at a lot of the gateways into the city in particular. There were some challenges there as far as the funds not quite being big enough, challenges with working with Caltrans and various agencies. And so at that time, then their recommendation was to let the fund continue to grow. So this seems like a good time to reopen that discussion, especially off the heels of the last meeting where we talked about using a portion of that for something that was a large temporary project. So I think it's time for us to just re-explore that. And I could work with that ad hoc committee, and then we would come back at the retreat in January with their recommendation. So that's kind of the estimated timeline and background. So if there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think it would be great to have a mix of, older commissioners who have served for some time, newer commissioners, all of that. So take it away.
That. So I hadn't realized that there had been a previous kind of issue on a desire to do Gateway and then issues with Caltrans. And I'll just share that we now have a pretty strong relationship with Caltrans, which is an historic pivot. So if that ends up being a desire, I'd be interested in hearing about it and trying to help facilitate that. Okay.
Thank you.
I
Be
actually,
the first to the buzzer. No.
actually just one question. What is the time commitment, just for everyone's consideration?
I think probably we would have an in-person meeting at first to really go over the master plan and sort of discuss and get, answer some questions. How can the funds be used? How much is in there? What, to help make sure that ad hoc committee really understands how the fund functions and grows, how the funds are generated and used. And probably a couple of follow-up meetings and discussions. Most of it can probably be done via email or Zoom. But it's probably not more than 5 hours, something along those lines, I would expect.
That was a great question. Yes, and before the retreat, so you'll have a recommendation then. Okay, that's nice. Is anyone interested?
This is maybe a broader question. When the Percent for the Art program was initiated, was there any directive as to how that was going to improve art in the city? Like, was it bringing in artists from national and international, or was it supposed to, I guess, make local artists more part of the community? And I guess that's a broader question, because maybe that's something that I can research, and if you could direct me towards it.
So I can give you a brief answer, and the intent was that the Public Art Fund would generate a much larger impactful pool of monies than what we get from the municipal Percent for Art. So while we've had a bubble of construction in recent years here in Palo Alto, the reality is that most years the municipal Percent for Art does not amount to very much money. So this was an opportunity to have a pool of funds where we could have a signature larger artwork at some location. So that's where it came from. It wasn't as much local artists. A lot of our municipal Percent for Art tends to do more of those smaller and local projects. Does that answer? Okay. So who's interested in jumping in?
I'm interested.
Me too.
Okay, but we need some longer standing ones too.
I would be interested,
Okay.
Lauren.
Yes, I appreciate that, Ben, because I know that you did the research a few years ago. So it'd be great to have you continue on that.
Okay.
And then how do we make a decision? Who else would like to
Well-
be involved?
Yeah, I think that gets tough. So I think we've got Smith, Stern and De La Garza all interested. So,
Yes.
why don't we circle up after this and sort of see strategically with other projects going on, what makes sense?
I wanted to, could I add that,
Yeah.
After Commissioner Miyagi, I hadn't realized that this was kind of in play, except for that last time when we, in August, when we voted on the
Mhm.
code art, installation.
Mhm.
And then he mentioned that there's this idea of having a one signature art piece. So then I've been really ruminating on that puppy. So, and I would love to be able to share those ideas.
Of course. Okay, so we have your names. We'll powwow and have further conversations and see what's going to make sense and fit with schedules. But thank you. Good to know so many people are interested and excited to jump into that conversation.
It is
And it will be
wonderful.
a broader conversation at the retreat.
True. Okay, now we're moving on to the second non-action item, which is a follow-up discussion of the approval of the work plan. So we presented on October 7th and the council did unanimously agree to our work plan. A couple of things were mentioned. You probably saw this. Thank you, Nadia, for including it. That additional direction to pursue a plan for extensive artistic activation of the Coverly space in collaboration with the artists. So this is what you were just speaking about. And so we could open up for discussion about that and see if people have ideas on how we can get going on that, or if you think we should set up a second ad hoc committee for that.
I had thought that today would be sort of a conversation. I know various commissioners logged in and listened, and so we could discuss that meeting. The work plan, we really dig into again at the retreat as we look at what we got to in the work plan, what's still pending in the work plan, and what the next 2 years look like. But yeah, I didn't know if there was more of a desire for conversation about that joint meeting with council that took place.
And we're thinking this is over the next 2 years.
The work plan is, if that
Well-
goes to council, is technically 1 year,
Right.
although in our retreat, because of the long lead time of most
could-
of what we work on, we tend to telescope out 2 years.
Correct. Okay, I was just thinking about what the city's expectations are too for the timing on that, which I guess that can all change as we know, Coverly, so.
Well, I know, and that I've been talking to Commissioner De La Garza about this, and I know she's been talking to you about it too, Council Member Burt, about what in the short term and how to fund and what it should be and where it should go. And in my opinion, the Coverly is such an underutilized resource, right? So if we could somehow make it a destination in the community, make it so people want to go there and have a cup of coffee and see what the artists are doing and have public installations of people, the residents, the artists who are in residence art there. That would be super exciting, and I think even more exciting. It's great to have our artists in residence and have each of the artists who are there do their interventions, the public interventions. But I think it really could be something much more spectacular with, a little bit of money and some good planning. That's
Like
all I
an
can say.
Ada's Cafe.
Yeah,
with
like Ada's.
Tables
Yeah.
and with the art studios open.
Exactly.
For people to just.
And even have art outside that you could walk around like a
Yeah.
public art space.
Yeah, I think definitely opening up a discussion about that. would be wonderful. And I think also having a more visible community liaison person there would be helpful. Just to open up the communication, even something like a bulletin board that is helping people to navigate all of that, because I think that those channels of communication, it isn't feeling like that's very open right now, and I think that would be a really great first step. And also some kind of budget, absolutely, to and I was actually thinking some kind of style guide. I think signage, for example, it's really difficult to navigate your way around that space. Would make it a lot friendlier and more open. I think there's a lot of things that could happen there to make it a more inviting space and more activated. Absolutely.
Is there a gallery space where you can have like call for art and have, you
There
know,
used to be U7 was our gallery space, and then I think we lost that during the pandemic.
It's more of a regular rental, so it's challenging because there are rentals that take place every weekend. So it kind of has taken away the opportunity to have an exhibition that would be able to span a weekend.
yeah, because it would be nice if you had the gallery space you could use it to bring in funds to help fund many projects. I mean, so it can become more self-sufficient. And I mean, obviously having someone who, you know, can work either part-time or whatever to run those different things would also,
Yeah,
or they get a discount for studio space or something that, you know.
Yeah, I think Art Bias in Redwood City is a really good model for that right now.
Yeah, and the one in Pacifica, I'm completely losing it, but they have a really great model. They're just for how they run it and how they get the fundraising so that the Sanchez Art Center. That's right.
And I think with having the city running the whole space, that's going to make lots of that stuff easier to navigate. I was thinking that also a revenue stream could be renting out the outdoor spaces for like a weekend market, which would definitely bring more people into the space. Things like that can really work, I think.
I actually have a question. I've for the most part heard of only the events during daytime. Do they have like evening events?
The Coverly Artists, most of the events take place during the day. For instance, over the course of the weekend, there were 3 very well-attended workshops that were hosted by Coverly Artists. So there is some activation taking place through their community service and their community outreach now. But most of them are not in the evening. There are other activities that take place at Coverly in the evening. There's, you know, dog training and CPR training and all kinds of amazing things that take place on the campus.
Well, and I'm just sort of putting it out there in terms of brainstorming. I've heard of some art spaces where they have joint efforts with pop-up opportunities like restaurants or wine tasting. I mean, I think sort of food and culture seems to get come together, and I think that would also invite. First of all, it invites revenue, and then also it potentially invites people that otherwise don't have time in the daytime. It's more like off hours. In very much in vein of code art, where we're bringing an audience in during evening time, and I kept thinking, how do we bring that type of traffic to that area?
We did a number of years ago, we hosted Coverly Stock, which was extremely well attended, and it was a lot of fun. But it is also really tricky from like a serving food health department standpoint. collecting revenue, all of that. And that was a great experience, but I would like to explore if we could do something like that again, but trying to do it on an ongoing basis, it's a lot of staff effort to do that.
I think part of the challenge there is the staffing, that there's very overworked people, it seems, who are working there. And if part of the overall budget that is perhaps going to be opening up for Cubberley, if there is somebody who is like really engaged and really loves the place, I think that that would solve a lot of problems.
One of the things I've been hearing a lot about is these night markets. Have you heard about them? And I imagine it's organizations that kind of lease out an area and they bring a lot of traffic. They sell tickets. And I wonder if, because Cupperley is such a big space, I wonder if we can have something like that happening. And then also then you have, maybe evening, art studio. So people can cross-pollinate a little bit. And I don't know if that's a viable idea.
So it sounds like kind of a collaboration between the city and different organizations in the city. What does the current contract ask of Cubberley artists?
Good question. So the artists are required to do free community events each year. And so that can be a combination of leading an event or assisting with a couple of other events. They also are required to participate in open studios, so open their studio during those events to let the public in and see what they're doing and ask all those questions, because people love to see the inside of an artist's working studio. They are required also to donate an artwork to the city's collection, which the commission has seen come before you previously. And that is, those are the broad brushstrokes of what is required of them.
And are there restricted hours that the artists can be working in studios, or is it
The
pretty much-
studio is really theirs.
Theirs.
And so
That's
they
nice.
they utilize it. Some of them are working, mom hours when the kid's in school. Some of them only have evenings available. So everyone keeps kind of different hours. But it's rare to go over there and there's nobody in their studio. Tara's there all the time.
Lately, since 4 a.m. Yes.
And how many studios do we offer?
There are 22 studios. And then there's one rotating studio, which occasionally we also rotate in the artist in residence.
Okay, that's helpful.
One of the things that I would love to see in Palo Alto is more community activity. I know you just said there were 3 well-attended workshops, which is great, over the weekend. But that's just 20 persons per workshop. But I mentioned to you the idea of having digital code art, projection mapping, volunteer, not volunteer, but amateurs or community members creating projection mapping. For example, I think Cubberley would be a great place to try and do that because there's a lot of empty walls. And we have a bunch of tinkerers here, as we all know, and who are writing code and things like that. And as I mentioned to you before, that the technology has really come down to a more basic level, like all kinds of technologies do. They start huge and expensive, but now we can actually create projection mapping on our own homes or on structures. So I would love to see some kind of community projects, activation where people would be excited and that would draw people in. And like I mentioned, a destination, well, then people would stop and maybe have dinner and, have more than just a coffee. Yeah.
And involving the schools, and getting, whether it be, a place for, students to have an exhibit or, a temporary mural or, just a place where, whenever you involve schools, you're going to get a lot of participation in it. And I think that would always be great.
Lots of ideas. Any other comments on the meeting or the work plan? Before we take it to retreat? Anyway, lots of great ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can just continue this discussion at the retreat. It's going to be really exciting. So thank you, everyone. I didn't see any public letters, but maybe I missed them in the new format.
No public letters.
Any commissioner questions, comments, or announcements?
We're going to be coming with more dates for the retreat. We're having trouble getting a date when everybody's available, and we like to have everyone there. So more emails are coming your way.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, actually. So I wondered what happened in Cincinnati and at your conference based upon our discussion the previous month. I'd love to hear if there's, what happened, and if you have something to say to us about what happened.
It was great. I feel like because it's not an agenda item, it's a little difficult to get into right now, but I encourage you to look up Link Cincinnati and look at their social media, and you'll see what an impact it is. When we have another code art item that comes forward, we'll definitely have more to share at that time.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And I know we'll hear from Nadia on the January dates. And I look forward to seeing you at the Open Studios at Coverly. This meeting is adjourned.